Second Baptist Church members know that our ultimate calling is to bear witness to Jesus Christ, so we work diligently to care for others as Jesus calls us to do. Many members of Second Baptist have taken to heart the challenge to love your neighbor as yourself. One is a man who crisscrosses the heartland on a bicycle to make friends with as many people as possible. In 1988, Ed Chasteen began organizing groups of William Jewell students to serve as peacemakers. Louisiana had just elected a member of the KKK to their state legislature, and in response, Ed formed a nonprofit called Hate Busters to prevent and respond to hate. Since that time, hundreds of individuals have been impacted by Chasteen's work throughout the region. In addition to being known as the Pedlib Prof, Ed has also been officially named as Second Baptist's ambassador to other faith groups. For 2BC, working towards justice also means forming alliances with existing groups which share common goals for justice, like the Greater Kansas City Interfaith Council and the Dialogue Institute. Both of these organizations seek to engage their community, create harmony, and celebrate diversity while engaging the sacred. They promote mutual understanding, respect, and cooperation among people of diverse faiths and cultures. A few years ago, 2BC shared in an iftar dinner with Muslims from our community in observance of Ramadan. As delicious as the food was, most attendees agreed that the highlight of the evening was the friendly table conversation between Christians and Muslims. Sometimes extending hands of friendships and support to people who live in other nations can happen right across the street. Back in 2015, Gwen Phillips dreamed of opening a modest, not-for-profit fair trade store, a place that would showcase handcrafted products made by artisans and farmers in developing nations around the world. The next year, with the support and encouragement of the church leaders, Gwen and a small band of volunteers transformed an unused small motor repair shop across the street from the church into the Many Hands Fair Trade Shop, which showcases and sells fair trade products from over 20 different countries. The shop benefits from the church-owned storefront space, but it has limited electricity, no plumbing, and receives no direct funding from the church. Looking toward the future, Gwen would welcome additional volunteers to work at the store so they could open the doors more than 2 days a week, and practical solutions to address the sometimes steamy hot and sometimes frigid days inside their little shop that would make it possible to welcome shoppers more months of the year. Many of Jesus' actions and teachings urged his countrymen to reach across racial and gender divides, and second is finding ways to partner with community organizations that have been striving for justice for a very long time. Last year, Second Baptist hosted an online event at the invitation of the Greater Kansas City Black History Book Club to discuss systemic issues in the nation as well as in the KC Metro. Pastor Jason and 3 other panelists discussed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Other members from 2BC are also active with the Clay County African American Legacy, an organization that honors and celebrates African American pioneers in our country, and the Liberty African American Legacy Memorial, a project that seeks to honor the more than 700 African Americans buried in mostly unmarked graves in the segregated sections of Fairview and New Hope cemeteries. Just as in Jesus' days, the gospel is best lived out in relationships, and that brings us to Project Koinonia. Project Koinonia began when the pastors at 2BC and Metropolitan Missionary Baptist Church, a predominantly African American congregation in Kansas City, began conversations about creating a partnership between their 2 churches. These conversations, plus activities sponsored by Metropolitan, known as the Met, created opportunities for members from 2BC to work alongside members of the Met, and friendships began to form. Communities Creating Opportunity, a Northland organization connected with the Met, provided ongoing support and communications assistance as plans between the 2 churches began to take shape. Then a leadership team planned an online shared book study, and over 80 participants from both churches registered for a 6-week discussion of Jamar Tisby's The Color of Compromise, moderated by the 2 churches' pastors. That study was only the beginning. There is overwhelming consensus among the book study participants of both churches that they want the church connection to continue to grow. There are current plans for some shared devotional and worship experiences during Holy Week, and many more plans are in the early stages of development. Project Koinonia is one example of the Sankofa image, looking backward to learn from the past, taking action in the present, and learning from the past and the present to step into the future. This has been a sampling of the ways God is working in the hearts of Second Baptist Church members to move from thoughts to action in pursuit of the justice God intends for all creation. It's for the sake of love, for the sake of sharing God's love, that Second Baptist Church is committed to living out God's intent for believers, as the prophet Micah wrote. What God requires of us is to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God.